he will have the white pieces in a must-win. Magnus, with a draw or a win, will go straight through to the grand final that will be played on Friday. Here we go.
Here we go. It's another Sicilian. It's been the opening of this match. This time, switching it up, Magnus. No more Sicilian Najdorf. It's a different branch of the opening, and Magnus will be hoping that Vasiligraf shows slightly less expertise here, because Magnus was in trouble 2 games ago when he last had black. And look at MVL now looking down away from the computer screen, just trying to pick a variation here. Of course, he's seen this all before. And Magnus being provocative. This line known to be dangerous for black. He's not playing safety first chess, safety first kind of brand here.
It's a Sil for the kill. There is no safety first brand when it comes to open Sicilians, and Maxime taking it head on. He does slow down after this move, bishop to b7. David, I'm not super familiar with this theory. After white gets the knight to e4, you said it's known to be dangerous for black. What are the dangers in these positions?
It's mostly the holes, the dark squared holes around black's king, and I think we might see those exploited by Maxime Vasiligraf, or at least an attempt to get at them over the next few turns. Magnus had this opening last Champions Chess Tour event. I'm trying to remember the opponent. I think it might have been Alariza Faruja, but either way, it was a complicated game. Magnus was on the ropes there and did manage to survive eventually. But yeah, let's just jump in while Maxime thinks, having been surprised by this last move. It's all about this hole, especially in particular. The white knight wants to get at it and jumps in instantly. Good timing. I was a bit lucky there. The black bishop does remove that piece though, and now the key is this piece. It's locked in. Magnus wants to break out with this pawn push. I think this is the main move, if I know my opening theory, because you don't want to allow white time to push back this knight and then fix a pawn on the c5 square. Your bishop would be dead for the rest of the game.
Yeah, and that pawn on d6 would be such a stronghold in the position. You just cannot give white the time to advance in with that c-pawn. So expecting black to push c5, is that super critical? And it's on the board, so Magnus does realize that. Maxime can still push that knight out of the way. c4 still in the air.
Yeah, c4 still in the air. The black knight will retreat. I'm not sure exactly where, but most likely this way. And at least now Magnus does have the advantage of this bishop being on a great diagonal. This white pawn as well looks mightily strong, but could be a weakness long term in the endgame. So yeah, really imbalanced position. Magnus not playing safe chess, as we mentioned. He's taking risks. He's so principled. He's playing the opponent, not the tournament situation. I think that's instructive, a lesson for everyone.
At least he has great air quality, Maxime Vasiligraf. He's gonna need it to win this game against the great Magnus Carlsen. And talking about great people, we did see that interview with Vichy Anand. I thought it was so interesting how he said that the replacement rate will be much faster going forwards now, that people will stay for a shorter period of time in the top. Now for these two, Magnus and MBL, how long do you expect those two to be, inside top 20 maybe?
Depends how soon they want to retire. I expect them both, if they wanted to be, especially Magnus, to be up there for at least another decade in the top 20. But yeah, I agree with Vichy. I mean, there's just so many youngsters coming through. It's hard to kind of maintain the energy when you're a slightly older player, especially now that chess is becoming much, much quicker. But yeah, that mix, that blend of experience and kind of energy, still, these guys, they're kind of managing to cope at the moment.
Will it be more like other sports where you're maybe, in your 20s, maybe is where you peak mostly, and then sort of in your 30s, people start to retire? I don't know about retire, but I agree with you that chess is becoming younger now. And I think computers play such a big role in that. This entire generation is born on computers. They start playing chess on computers. Now, if you're not a grandmaster, by the time you're 13, it's time to start thinking about another career. So things have changed a lot. But for these two, for Magnus and Maxime, I'm thinking it's been now over a decade that they've been in the world top 10. Yeah. So that's already quite a while. That is quite a while. I mean, can it be another decade?
I think
Could
so.
it be into their 40s? I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, Vichy, he's 54.
Yeah.
And yeah, he's playing right up there. I think he's still in the world top 10.
He's in and around the world top 10, that's for sure. Gukesh has overtaken him as well as Indian number 1, but Gukesh number 8, I believe. Yeah, it's scary how strong the youngsters are, but they still have yet to displace Magnus. Jan Nepomniachtchi and Ding contested the last World Championship, and they're not getting any younger. I believe you can kind of maintain a level for a long time, but the peak, probably. Magnus said it himself, late 20s.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know if anyone will ever displace Magnus. I think Magnus himself will just decide when he's sort of done with it. It's so difficult to imagine a player actually overtaking Magnus, even for the next 5 years, to me. But if he just stops playing, right,
That would help
that
the others.
rating will be just insanely hard to overtake, right? Sometimes I think, Kaya, that there are all these great players, right? Some of the greatest that the chess world has seen, and they're all around Magnus's age. Anish, Maxime, Jan Nepomniachtchi, Hikaru Nakamura, and everyone else in the top 10, these 90s kids. It almost seems like it's so unlucky that they're born at the time.
I know.
And they have Magnus Carlsen. Yeah. It's like being a football player in the era of Messi and Ronaldo. No one else really gets up there. And same here. I mean, all of these players probably would have challenged for world championship title if it wasn't for Magnus. And maybe that's why now there's this entire renewed thing of fighting for the world championship title. And I think Fabi, we've seen him perform so incredibly well, just extremely inspired now. I think everyone wants to become a world champion and feels like there's a bigger chance than there has ever been.
Yeah, it was like in the days after Kasparov announced his retirement. Of course, he'd already relinquished the title. He lost that match to Kramnik, but Kasparov was still the undisputed number one. Suddenly, Anand, Topalov, Kramnik, they were kind of fighting it out for years. It was unclear who the world number one was until Magnus came along. So yeah, it definitely feels like more up for grabs now. Unless Magnus is playing in your tournament, unless it's unless he's really in the mood, in the zone.
Yeah, I think for the longest time, this has been going around in the chess world that when Magnus plays a tournament, it's a race to the second place. And that's just sort of so disheartening for the other players. And really, I mean, exceptionally strong geniuses, as you call, and just all of them in the top 10. World number 2, Fabi. World number 3, Hikaru. Just all these guys, and then they've got this final boss to deal with. Yeah. And that's exactly what Emil has to deal with right now as well. He has to beat Magnus in this game. If he doesn't, he will be knocked down to the loser's bracket to play the loser's final tomorrow. Do you see chances in this game with the situation on the board for Emil to get that win?
Definitely some chances, and the fact that Magnus has slowed down on this last move will make Vasil feel extremely optimistic. Magnus had clearly prepared this opening, this risky line of the Sicilian that we mentioned, but now he has sacrificed a pawn. Vasil happily accepted that gift. White is now a pawn up in this current position, and if he can consolidate it, then White will be winning, simply winning long term. Black will have no counterplay, so it's all about the next few moves. Magnus not looking too happy with himself. He was kind of playing with his hair, looking away from the screen. I think he was trying to remember his opening preparation, the line he'd studied before, but he just doesn't look happy with himself. I don't think he was able to pull that out of the memory bank, and this last move looks a bit passive, Tanya.
Passive, but with an active threat, right? You are attacking the b2 pawn, so rook b2 is something that Maxime definitely cannot allow. Needs to find a way to counter that. The one move you definitely don't want to make in this position, David, is rook to b1 to guard that pawn, because suddenly that queen from f6 can move over to f5, and there's another tactic with the double attack there. So Maxime has to counter this threat, but I completely agree with you that the next few precise moves by Maxime, and he could very well just end up with a bishop pair and an extra pawn on the board. But how do you follow this up? Because queen to c3, I don't know if the queen trade is good or not, but it looks like you're spoiling your pawn structure and giving away quite a bit of your advantage, even if I was to trade the queens.
Yeah, suddenly this black knight is on an outpost forever, and these two white pawns, you might be a pawn up, but the double C pawns give you no chance of ever marching forward, really. And we see the best moves, according to the computer, just below the board there. And the moves we've discussed, of course, relevant, but only one move to keep the advantage. A +1 advantage, though, plus 1.2 there, according to the engine. Significant stuff, and it's bishop to b4. That's not instinctive, that's not natural. It's very rare to kind of retreat a bishop and allow it to be captured by a knight, and this is purely to plug the b file. The b file is open for black's rook. You need to block it. You cannot push this pawn. That would be desirable because your rook is undefended in the corner. So bishop to b4, will he spot it? Yes, he does. Maxime Vasil in top form, as we've mentioned, this tournament. And the idea is that if black ever takes your bishop, actually this only improves white's chances. Suddenly this rook has opened up, and white will be able to connect 3 by pushing his pawn forward to c5, and a very strong formation here.
I'm going to be honest, David, that move was not on my radar. Retreating moves are hard.
Me neither.
Bishop to b4 is just so impressive there by Maxime. And the more you see it, the more you realize that if the a file was to open up, that gives White a lot of counterplay. So if Magnus really can't neutralize this bishop on b4, White does have an extra pawn. White's got those healthy bishops, and that bishop might just get even more healthy once it drops back to c3. Another retreating move which hits the queen and stops any play on the b line, and I'm loving that diagonal. Where is Magnus finding his compensation then?
He doesn't look happy on the camera, Magnus Carlsen. Maybe we need the engine again to help us out here, because it looks like one more move and White has a almost decisive advantage. And wow, it says that Black has to be careful, otherwise the advantage grows. That kind of backs up what we thought, Tanya, but the moves are slightly surprising, I've got to say. Firstly, a queen check. You always look for checks, captures, and threats in any position, but it looks like this helps White's bishop simply block, and White now one move closer to castling to safety. The secondary move mentioned by the engine, maybe more kind of ambitious here. The knight jumping into the center, threatening a nasty fork. The knight would land on b3, hitting the white queen, hitting the white rook in the corner. Oof, Magnus needs to go for something like this. If he's too slow, if, for example, he just castles, then your move. Bishop back to c3, attacking the black queen. Next, White just moves the bishop out of the way, castles, safety, pawn up, and a win for Vasiliev. Yeah, stakes are high, and right now, how difficult do you think those moves are, Tanya? He plays one of them.
He finds it. Magnus Carlsen with queen e5, coming in with a check. You can't play slow moves, you can't play natural moves anymore. Time is really of the essence in this position, and White has to block that check. Expecting bishop e2, but bishop e2 might even invite the knight jump that we were looking at, opening up that bishop on the diagonal, putting more pressure on e2. But David, if I was to block it with the queen, then I'm just wondering, that gives Black the opportunity to perhaps go for the b4 pawn eventually.
Yeah, White would kind of have lost control over the b4 square now. I'm not sure whether you trade queens immediately, but for example, if you did, then it might make some sense to try and take this b4 pawn. At least now Magnus in an endgame, we know how good he is in those. Still a pawn down, still an uphill struggle, but Black has some level of stability. So I don't think Vasiliev in this must-win situation will offer this trade of queens. At least it's not maybe his style, and I'm expecting this move, bishop to e2, just try and castle. You mentioned knight to d4 being Black's kind of key move here, the move Magnus is relying on. But what happens if White just steps back and forces the issue? Pins, forcing you to trade off the queens, and we are left with an endgame, opposite coloured bishops, White with dark square bishop, Black with light square bishop, but White is a pawn up and still an easy plan to throw things forward.
Yes, but with the opposite color bishop, will it be enough? But I think it would be a dream position. Whether it's enough or not, Maxime will have to show great technique, but just playing for two results, you can take the g2 pawn, but then the rook lines up on the g line and you end up winning the g7 pawn with a lot of activity. So that doesn't help Magnus's cause. So queen e5, you're pointing at the move bishop to e2. Maxime taking his time right now.
Maxime taking his time, we're expecting bishop to e2. Just block, and that variation we mentioned, pretty much forced. Looks pretty promising for White, but will he be ambitious? I'm wondering if he's going to move his king.
No.
Surely not. But
David,
what else could he be thinking about?
Oh my gosh.
Oof, I don't like it. I would never play it. But it is Maxime, and he's in a must-win situation, and desperate times call for desperate measures.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. King d1 would be just unreal. But now that you mention it, and now that Maxime's actually thinking about it, and we all know what kind of just how creative Maxime can get with his play, he doesn't go for it. It would be just too much to watch.
Yeah, I think this one is safe, it's logical, and it's strong. And if Black doesn't jump in with the knight now, then White is ready to castle, ready to consolidate the material advantage. Okay, wow, he trades off, he goes for this pawn. But, okay, he's re-established the material balance. The evaluation bar says Maxime's just winning now. There are all sorts of tempting moves. White has moves like rook to a5, attacking the black queen. I think we just have to show what's going on. He's grabbed a pawn, Magnus, but I think this pawn was actually the least important out of all of them. The rook is attacked. I'm wondering whether you just shift across. Is Magnus banking on taking this pawn?
Wow.
Maybe he's trying to trap this white rook, but has he forgotten that White's king still has the right to castle? It still can jump to the queen side and suddenly defend your rook. And Black has pretty much gone all in on the wrong flank. Yeah. Black queen and bishop are actually misplaced here.
They misplace it once white's queen comes to g5. You're hitting that bishop, you're hitting the pawn on g7. Now you're threatening a mate on e7. And there's just no coordination. You don't even have time to get your king to safety because short castle also runs into a move like queen g5 where the rook and the queen will line up to that g7 square. David, this can't be what Magnus is counting on. After bishop takes g2, I think what he really wants to do in this position, once the rook slides over, is to further put pressure on that bishop on e2 with a move like bishop f3, try and get the queens off the board. But that doesn't help the cause.
This is a pin, and now white has some tempting moves. I'm looking at this hit on the black queen. I'm looking at this hit on the black queen just to try and break the pin. Still kind of a wild position, still really rare, this type of scenario, really unorthodox, so the players cannot rely on pattern recognition. But it is effectively good for white. Maxime just needs to calm himself down, and he goes for the other move I mentioned, maybe the more natural move, just hitting the black queen first. Black queen only has one safe square to kind of keep this pin. And now Maxime does move his rook. The bishop drops back. Valuation bar not impressed. Still looks good for white, but maybe no kind of natural way now to meet all of the threats. Suddenly this might be a bit of a nasty one. A check from the back rank.
The only thing that explains this move, rook to a5, because for me, rook g1 was really natural, is that Maxime did not like losing that h2 pawn. He wanted to first kick the queen out of the center of that square to make sure that it doesn't get to the h2 pawn. But in that bargain, he's given you access on the other side of the board. Maxime going for that g7 pawn, it allows a lot of dangerous checks into white's camp.
Yeah, we advocate for greed. Greed is good, grabbing pawns, unless the opponent has counterplay. And this check is really awkward for white to deal with. If you block with your bishop, you're eternally tied down here, and black can maybe even just trade everything off. Nope, not that one. Maybe black takes this bishop instead, and now it starts munching on some pawns.
Get greedy. Queen takes b2, attacking the rook, attacking the b4 pawn, which would attack the other rook. This would be bad news. So if queen b1, what does white want to do in that situation? Because it looks pretty forced, the line that you're pointing out.
Yeah, it looks like you can maybe force it this way as well, trading the bishops and then giving this valuable check. And no matter what, white drops back and we have that same position, Tanya. I think Maxime maybe has underestimated Magnus's counterplay. And the black king, which was vulnerable in those other variations, suddenly safe. If white's rook was just the a rook, just back on a1, none of this would exist. Small differences, but they make a huge effect here.
Yeah, it's just amazing how the position changes with that one rook move. You try to guard one side of the board, but lose control of the other side of the board. And now it's all in Magnus's hand, his own fate. Queen b1 check or first trade on e2. But I like the idea of going queen b1 first. Just feels more forcing, David. Wow, and Magnus needs only a draw.
Needs only a draw, and that variation we pointed out with black's queen jumping in, checking, winning some pawns, suddenly endgames would likely become safe for black, and we all know Magnus's skills in the endgames.
And can I just point out how bizarre this position is?
It's been the story of the day.
Yeah.
Every game is so weird, wacky, wonderful, and unique.
And accurate.
And accurate. That's the most surprising thing, that the players are able to navigate their way through such choppy waters. Surprising stuff, but impressive stuff.
Really impressive. I mean, this is, you're used to seeing the pieces develop, talking about pawn structures, talking about king safety, and a game take a long turn. But each and every game that we've seen so far, and this one as well, I mean, what even is going on? The kings are in the center. There's a pawn on d6 that white has. White's rook is already on g7. It's just madness all across.
Again, it's a bit like yesterday. We saw some games where players just shuffle pieces, throw them randomly on the board, and they just appear like this. And Magnus does go for that trade, gives the check, takes the pawn, as we predicted. I think Maxime's winning chances are dwindling by the move, dwindling by the second here. Problem is his rooks are attacked. Okay, there is a checkmating threat. I didn't spot this. This is threatening to lift his rook up to g, check that black king, catch it on the back rank. But first, Magnus takes a pawn with check. The white king
to give more. Maxime is just a crank trick that you're talking about. Magnus can pick up the other pawn with a check. The king slides to g1 to safety, and then you've got that big threat on the board. And I think what Magnus needs to do then is to slide with his own king over to the king side, protecting that g8 square. King g1, king f8 is what I'm expecting.
Maxime suddenly looks really happy, leaning back, kind of stretching. Is he like, okay, I've got a chance?
Really happy, or he's given up?
Could be either. He is currently 2 pawns down, the Frenchman. But he's in the flow. He wants to attack. His king is safe. And watch out for checkmate. Okay, the black rook cuddles up with his king, blocking any potential checks. Now it's harder. It takes longer for white to break through. What?
Whoa!
A rook sacrifice instantly from Maxime Vachier-Lagrave. This is crazy. This is genius. There's checkmating ideas all over the place. Magnus has missed this one. Look at Magnus's reaction.
Yes, it's just an amazing move. Black can capture it with the king or the rook, but dangers everywhere. David, I think we have to jump in with an analysis board. If you take it with the rook, go on, David.
Yeah, I was just going to say, look below. There's only one move. Otherwise, white has a +8 advantage. The only move is not an obvious one. You cannot actually take this rook. You have to move your queen to e4, but that is incredibly hard. Let's just show those variations. You mentioned, Tanya, rook takes rook, allows a check, only one move to block, allows another check, only one move to run, and checkmate. You're caught. If you take with the king, equally disastrous here. King takes, met by a check, and another check, and another check, and a mate finally, the kiss of death.
Whoa, so one move now for Magnus Carlsen. And he finds it. Wow. And he finds it in less than a minute.
And the key idea is you're actually threatening a counter-strike on white's first rank. That's so tough to spot. And he also covers any checks. If rook takes rook and a king takes, suddenly white's queen has no checks to deliver. Centralization and heartbreak for Vachier-Lagrave. He thought he was winning.
Yeah.
He spotted this incredible trick, and it's, I wouldn't say backfired. It was incredible, but suddenly he meets with just stoic defense.
Yeah, and I think it's on Maxime's face. He realizes it. And David, I think you're absolutely right that Maxime felt with rook takes f7, taking that pawn, it was game over. And it was all a Maxime show. The queen e4 just finding this fantastic move, and it's all turned around. This has been just incredible once again by Magnus.
Another level. This is just crazy. Poor Maxime. He plays a brilliancy, an amazing rook sacrifice that cannot be captured. He's on the brink of checkmating Magnus, and Magnus finds the only defense. And it's such a hard move. How did Magnus find that?
And so quickly as well, right, David? Like, you would see rook f7 and you're playing, you would just give up. You would resign.
Yeah.
You'd think that it's all over for your king. But again, in these high-pressure situations, Magnus just finding the best defensive resource. And I wonder if he saw this in advance, if this was an idea that was there in his head already. Or did he just find it after rook takes pawn?
I think Magnus is a bit lucky, because if white hadn't spotted this idea, I think his plan was to play this move anyway. So the fact that this move was probably on his radar means that he was able to quickly calculate that it survives, it clings on, it covers all the important squares.
And all Maxime can do is give a check with that rook on e7. And unfortunately, that's not the kiss of death. Checkmate, because that's not a queen, and black's king just goes to d8. Absolutely safe there, sidesteps any checks, and the threat of rook to b1 on the first rank is just unstoppable. There's nothing that you can do with white to stop that.
Yeah, just how is the evaluation bar still in the middle? It looks like either white is checkmating black, or black is going to bring his rook to b1 and win the white queen.
I think I understand, David.
Wow, okay.
Or maybe I don't.
Hit me with it, Tanya.
What I wanted to do was go rook e7 check. Only move for black. Double up on the 7th rank because I have one move. And I'm hoping that after rook b1, I've got enough counterplay on this. Wow.
Well, rook b1, the most natural move. Looks like you're winning, pinning and winning the white queen. But this would be a mistake. White can take a pawn with check.
King moves to c8. King e8 is checkmate in 1.
Check.
Move to b8.
And maybe I can come back and block.
Ooh.
I save the day. I cover the first rank. This is incredible. Maxime's found an equally incredible move. He's not even given the check. I think maybe he should have started with this, Tanya. First, he brings his rook up the board. This is really flashy. Rook takes rook. He will give a check, and it is a sacrifice, but white will give this one, this nasty check with the queen. And now suddenly the black king cannot move. Remember, this is a back rank checkmate, so black's queen would have to dive in the way, give its life to block. And this would be crazy. White would now take the black queen, and what a position we have here. Queen versus 2 rooks. Valuation bar says draw, but this is far from it.
This is far from over. If Maxime gets this position, he's going to try and play this out, because the d6 pawn combined with the queen can set up some mating ideas in that, and the h pawn can also start advancing down the board. So that would still be game on for these players. So rook g7, I like it. It keeps more practical chances in the position.
This is true. He has set a trap. And that line that we mentioned, the most natural move, bringing the rook down, would lead to that kind of transposition. White would give a check first and kind of chase the king into the corner, a check, and then a block. And White would keep his king safe, keep his queen safe, and be winning thanks to this powerful pawn.
So Magnus needs to be a little careful right now. He has to find the right defense.
I think he has to give up his queen, Magnus Carlsen. He's done it already today, more than once, and he has to do it yet again, one final time. He has to take this rook, bite the bullet, and hope that he survives, and he does. Remember, this is the variation. Check, a queen check, and black has to block with his queen, throwing the queen off the board to survive. It still looks scary with the black king disconnected, but yeah, he will be holding on here, maybe blocking with his rook more accurate. Oh, let's jump back. Magnus Carlsen, this is the moment of truth. He has to take this white rook.
I mean, he found queen e4. I think he's going to find rook f7 as well. And it has to be through process of elimination. Just if you spot the idea that the white rook can come to defense on the other line from the c file that we saw, if black's rook was to jump in, then Magnus just goes for rook takes rook here.
Yeah. Maxime, in thinking about it, he's really lucky that Magnus has some time. If he played this when both players had 1-2 minutes left, I think Magnus would have just resigned or collapsed. But the fact that Magnus has this luxury of 3-4 minutes, this is where time kind of balancing there we go, rook takes rook, best move. Just balancing that kind of accuracy versus time dilemma is so important.
Yeah, time management in these formats is absolutely critical. David, but once again, this position, I think Maxime's going to try. He has to try. Well, there's no other option because a draw is as good as a loss right now. Maxime, in a must-win situation, he's going to pick up that pawn on g6, or is he thinking about ideas of setting up some mating threats along that e7 square?
Yeah, visually it still looks so dangerous. If you could pick up the white queen, just drop her on e7, it's checkmate. But the problem is black's rook is such a staunch defender here, and evaluation bar moves. Magnus should have blocked with his rook.
Wait, what? Oh, you've got to hide with king to b7 because the king goes back, you lose the rook on b8.
But it's coming at the cost of some pawns. White's queen is going to get greedy here. Magnus saw one safe square. He's going to hide in the corner of the board. But suddenly White's going to get a bunch of pawns. Whoa, really crazy position still. I think Magnus kind of dropped the ball there slightly. He could have just kept everything intact, but adventurous with his king, as always.
It's a crazy position. So if you go back to a8, White actually just picks up the d7 pawn, and then we're talking about a d passer and an h passer and a potential drop of the e6 pawn as well.
He has to decide really carefully now which direction to go back in. As you say, just to point out your variation, Tanya, dropping back to the corner looks safer, but comes at the cost of pawns. And watch out for the white d pawn to make a nuisance of itself.
But David, Maxime can force this, right? Even if you were to go to c8, you've got this idea of queen going to c5 and then giving a check from c7 and picking up the d7 pawn.
Yeah,
and we've seen that.
Yeah, we'll see this on the board. Queen check. I don't know which way Magnus will go back. At least he has the options here, but queen takes pawn still. Now it's on the board.
And maybe that was a difference, that the king on a6, Magnus feels is better placed than the king on a8, and I believe him.
Yeah.
I don't know why, but I do.
We tend to believe Magnus when he goes for something in the endgame, and okay, he goes for the white d pawn now. If this pawn is captured, just to point out, on e6, then black is going to try to surround the passed pawn on the d file. Still some chances. White wishes all of his pawns were connected, but unfortunately they're all isolated. The d pawn separated from the f pawn, separated from the h pawn. Still some drawing chances.
Rook attacking the queen, and Maxime not immediately picking up the e6 pawn, which again just gives us such an insight into his mind, right? That he does slow down. He's looking at options. Most of us would just automatically go for this move. Eventually he does. How is Magnus playing so quickly in this position?
And so accurately. I mean, every move he has 5 or 6 options now with black. And Maxime, did he smile there? I think he's getting frustrated. His opponent's defending so well. And yeah, if any of those white pawns were just next to each other, they could kind of walk up the board. But the problem is the black rooks on the back rank actually guard all of the promotion squares. The 2 black rooks together cover everything, and black does have some counterplay. Black's a pawn ready to start marching.
White's got to get the other 2 pawns up the board. Start pushing the f pawn and the h pawn. Right now he's threatening a big check on c7 as well. It could be a big check in some positions, so you have to watch out for that.
This is still so wild.
Does black have the time to actually go ahead with that a pawn already? Start pushing the pawn?
Magnus will reveal all. He will.
It's the whole sort of going down for MVL to win this game and take it to Armageddon? Or you said there's still drama here.
Yeah, without seeing the evaluation bar, I would be extremely optimistic as white. But the clock situation, the fact that black's rooks are already on the green defensive squares, I think unless objectively he has some big chances, it's going to be hard to push this one further into a win. And there we go. Magnus is the one pushing this time. On to A5.
And I feel like neither of them deserves to lose this game, I have to say, because it's just been so fantastic. I couldn't agree more with that. I think this match has been just incredible to witness. Such fighting chess, accurate chess, combative play, attacking play by both these players, neither backing down. But in the end, there has to be one winner.
Yeah.
And Kaya, also, I think the drama isn't over in this one.
Okay,
We're still
nice.
going to see a lot.
I'll just lean back and enjoy the commentary then. Fantastic. What a match we're having here.
Yeah, it feels like there's
The
still some
Bonds
twists and
reached
turns ahead.
A3 in like 3 seconds. What happened there?
Yeah, we blinked for one moment and the pawn, it looked like it moved 3-4 squares forward in one move. But the white king is coming and he's trying to set up a mating net around the black king. I don't really see it, I've got to be honest. But Maxime, he's trying to scare Magnus here. And you've got to be careful when you push the pawn. If the black pawn pushes now, then white could at least take it off the board, dropping the white queen back. I wonder if Magnus is going to even plant a rook behind the pass pawn. That, again, tends to be decent strategy here. Let's just show what happens if Magnus tries to rush to the finishing line. It's a sprint finish here. If he pushes the pawn, then white could check. It's a double attack, and the pawn undefended. The pawn would drop off next. Still maybe a draw, but reluctant to do that. Magnus, he does indeed try to use the rook as a propeller for the pawn in the corner. He's supporting it, and he's just going to push till the bitter end. Maxime, meanwhile, going forward with his king.
Wow.
Look at this. If he pushes his pawn, will he get mated, Magnus Carlsen, on the edge of the board? How is white going to trap him here? The king's living a charmed life. If the white king marches forward, black does have a check to kick the king back. And Magnus, he's calling this bluff now. He's going to A4.
Maybe you just lose that A2 pawn now because your king is out of the A line.
What's
And look at that.
happening?
The king steps forward. You're threatening a checkmate on B4 and the rook is hanging. Is MBL winning?
He's winning. The queen is coming forward to B4. It's checkmate. Checkmate guaranteed.
Oh my gosh.
Wow.
And Magnus can't believe it. And Maxime. Flying from Magnus. Are we heading to Armageddon?
The answer is yes.
Yes, Kaya, I think we are because there's no way to fight this. You've got queen B4, a big checkmate coming in.
And queen takes pawn is also checkmate. 2 different checkmating threats. Black is losing a rook. We saw the reaction from both players. Maxime, miracles happen.
We're heading into an Armageddon, and look at Magnus.
Whoa.
We can't believe it. The players can't believe it. It's been such an accurate match. Magnus has played fantastic today. And a blunder to take it to Armageddon.
Tanya, you called it. You had the feeling, just this instinct that something crazy was about to happen. It felt like it was building, and Magnus took too many risks. He could have probably locked it down and won this pawn in a safer way, but he marched his king to the edge of the board and was punished.
That was the best king of the hill game that I've seen.
Oh.
Maxime getting his king all the way to C5 and checkmating Magnus. And what is happening now? Magnus's clock is ticking. Is he just getting ready to resign? He's getting ready for the Armageddon right now. He knows that this is over. He's getting his mindset ready for the next one. I don't even think there's a way to prolong this.
You just have to give up a rook. You have to check the white king away, but the white king will happily take a rook. And we all know queen versus rook, how hopeless that is. Magnus allows a checkmate on the board. And we have Armageddon.
We have Armageddon to decide the winner's fight. Makes an incredible comeback in the fight against world number 1 Magnus Carlsen to take it to Armageddon. They will now have a little bit of time to place their bids for time for the Armageddon to decide who goes straight through to the grand final on Friday and who is knocked down to the losers final tomorrow. This game, I've been following the Twitch chat. Everyone is just going crazy about this incredible game. It ends with a blunder from Magnus. Take us through the action here, David.
What a game it was. It ends with a mistake from Magnus Carlsen, but Maxime came up with some really creative ways to keep the game going and to create this mating net around the black king. And Magnus had taken some chances, but it was Maxime's maneuver, walking the king slowly but surely towards